want to talk a little bit about Christianity and why I feel like it doesn't make sense. So, consider this, right? God is supposed to be endlessly good, and He's perfect, all knowing, and almighty. All right? Loves us endlessly, and so on. Okay? But He also creates evil people. And the explanation for why He does that is because of free will. All right? Well, that doesn't make any sense. Because does that mean that good people do not have a free will? If people that are good and do good, they don't have free will then, or like, how do you explain that, right? Like he could just not have created the evil people. Well, we don't want to be a robot with no free will. Well, you wouldn't be. Like all the rest of the people would be completely free to do whatever they wanted, and they would have wanted good things because they are good people, right? And he would have known that, right? Because he knows everything. So that's not a good reason for that. Okay. So then, yeah, but the devil creates, evil and sin and stuff. Yeah, but who created the devil, right? The uh, God did, right? And he did. He didn't need to let the devil do all this horrible damage to the world and to humans and even animals. He didn't need to do that. Well, he needed to show people that the rule of the devil is bad. Okay. Well, then he doesn't need to spend 6,000 or many more years, depending on how old you believe the earth is, just to prove that, right? We all can clearly see that rape, violence, murder, and abuse and death and suffering is bad, right? It's obvious to all of us. And if it's not obvious to you, then you are either evil or insane. In which case, I would say that evil and is a form of insanity, actually. So, same. Okay, but and even if we grant that, well, for there to be free will, there needs to be evil. Okay, even if I don't agree with that because of the argument I said earlier, but even if we did, look at it this way, right? Free will? I don't think so. Where does our free will come from? Well, God. He created everything, and also us, of course. And He created all of us, including our free will. And if that free will wants bad things, well, then He created it like that. And then He gets mad about it? That doesn't make any sense. And so, like if free will comes from, I would say that free will comes from genetics and environment, right? It's a combination of those two. We did not decide our genetics, and we also did not decide our environment. So it's literally impossible for us to, truly have free will. We didn't choose our intellect. We didn't choose our, abilities. We don't choose what we want to do. We don't choose what we don't want to do. We don't choose our mental strength. We don't choose how good we are, how bad we are. We have a will with which we choose to do stuff, but that will is not free. Like we didn't design our own will, right? It was just given to us randomly, like maybe by God or maybe random genetics, but the fact remains we didn't decide what kind of what kind of free will we were going to have. We were given a will, and we just have to deal with it, right? And if I mean, obviously, happiness and being good is obviously the best thing. Any rational person can see that. But evil people do not. And is it their choice to not see that? I don't think so. Because if they really understood that, I don't think they would be evil, right? If they understood that being good and creating more happiness for themselves and everyone is clearly the best alternative, the best choice, well, I think they would have done that, right? So the only reason they don't do that is because they think it's not the best choice, right? And they didn't choose to not be able to understand that, right? It is a lack of ability to understand. Right? Maybe they can understand that it's bad in some sense, like they can understand that other people don't like that, and they can understand that they disagree and stuff, but they don't care. Like they don't have feelings with which to value those opinions, right? And you need to have that in order to understand it, right? Or at least you need to have feelings that don't, go in the opposite direction, where you value, where you actually value suffering, you know? Okay, and then, so, like, but we were in paradise, and that was perfect, and everything was good and stuff. But then we did something wrong, and then we were, punished by being sent to Earth because we ate a fruit. Well, we rejected God. Yeah, okay, so now God is punishing us by letting us be manipulated by the single most evil, supposedly, creature in the universe because we ate a fruit. That seems entirely too extreme. It seems completely absurd. It's like, let's say you had some parents, right? And they had a child, and that child did something wrong, right? Like the parents said, there's an apple on the table, but don't eat it. Don't eat it, okay? Because it's not for you. All right, fine. And then the child later eats it anyway, right? After being manipulated by an evil person, you know? And then the parents are like, huh, you ate the apple? Really? Well, that means you chose that evil person instead of us. So now we're gonna push you out of this beautiful home and your family, and you now have to go live with this evil person. We told you to not eat of that apple, and you didn't respect us. You didn't respect our command. So now you have to do that, right? Seems a tad too extreme, doesn't it? All right, and like, all right, and then there's another problem with that, right? Which is that okay, he created Adam and Eve, and they were completely good people with no knowledge of good and evil, right? Well, then why did they do something bad? Hmm? Why were they able to do something bad if they were completely good and there was no sin? Because, if there is no sin and no reason to do sin, then why did sin just come out of nowhere, right? Out of good. If you have good, then where does bad come into the picture? Weird. Not logical. I mean, not if you believe that there is, like, good is something that is completely separate from evil. I mean, for me, it's a gradual and it's a more chaotic spectrum, right? Because people can, make mistakes, and they can misunderstand, and they can, have irrational moments, and like varying degrees of different feelings, all kinds of things. They can be, they can have slightly worse intentions in one moment, and then better intentions in the next moment. um, you know, it's a little more chaotic in reality, in my opinion. Okay, but if you believe that, like, you can clearly separate good from evil, and if people are good, then they will never do evil. If they really are good and they're completely good, and God created paradise and there was no evil there, then why did they sin? Because sin is evil, right? So why did they do that then? Well, Satan tempted them. Okay, so why did God let Satan tempt them? Well, it was because of free will, right? Well, I mean, how is it free will if they were tempted and fooled, with lies, and they didn't know, like, the the fruit of the tree was supposed to give them knowledge of good and evil, meaning they didn't have that already. All right. Okay, so if they didn't have that, then how could they have possibly known that that was bad? I mean, the devil said that no, it's not wrong to eat of the tree. It's actually good, you know. So you're not gonna die. It's a good thing. Well, I mean, and if they believe that, then they didn't know the consequence. And if they don't know the consequence, then how can they be evil and be punished as if they knew the consequence, right? As if they are evil. They simply ate the fruit of a tree, right? It's not like they harmed anyone. Well, God didn't like it because He told them not to, and they still did it. That sounds really controlling, though. You know, it's like, yeah, but it's God. He's almighty. He's perfect. All right, so then He should be really forgiving. Yeah, but He is really forgiving, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it doesn't seem like that to me, because He gave these humans a ton of negative consequences for eating a fruit. Right? That doesn't seem very forgiving to me. All right, and then going back to the free will argument and Satan, right, and the devil, which is in the world, and he's supposed to be here because God is showing us that his way of doing things is bad. And okay, and the reason there's so much bad stuff happening is because of the devil. So apparently the devil influences us and tempts us and manipulates us into doing evil. Well, why does it let us do that? That's not free will. I mean, if we're fooled into doing something, again, then that means that we don't understand it. And if you don't understand what you're doing, you don't have free will, right? It's like, if I don't understand that if I keep walking, I'm going to fall to my death, right? Because I don't see anything. And if people tell me, just keep walking, it's safe, that's not free will, right? I prefer to stay alive. And if people tell me I will stay alive if I keep walking, and then I keep walking and I fall to my death, that isn't free will, right? Because I don't know what's going to happen, right? I'm lacking the required knowledge to make an informed choice. An informed choice is the only real choice, right? There is no choice if you don't know what the choices are, right? It's like, pick A, B, and C. Yeah, but what does that mean? What do they stand for? What are the different alternatives? I'm not going to tell you, just pick A, B, and C. Well, that's not really a choice, right? Because you don't know what each of them entail. It's not a free choice. right? And then there's all the genocide and murders and killings in the name of good, right? In God's name. That is insane. How could God ever command genocide? That doesn't make any sense, right? He's endlessly good. He's perfect and almighty. And he commands genocide? Do you know what genocide actually is? That is, imagine someone just hacking you to death. That is grotesque as, like, insert curse word, right? That is really bad, right? And now imagine that times 10,000, depending on how big the population is. Maybe 100,000, right? That is very bad. Huh? Don't you agree? It's like, yeah, but those people that he commanded to be genocided were evil. Well, killing is also evil. So doesn't that mean that the people doing that and also God commanding it is evil? Well, no, because actually killing people that are evil to each other so much that they're suffering from it is actually merciful because you're ending their suffering. Wait a minute. Yeah, what just happened was actually really nice, because he came, like, my patient contact, came in and offered me the belt, which is a sign of trust, or like that I'm not gonna hurt myself or others, because I seem healthy enough mentally to not do that, and that's awesome. I love that. That feels good. It feels like every sign that I am, not crazy, or I mean less crazy, is so awesome. Feels really good. Just like all of this, it's really horrible, man. Just being in there and just everybody, oh, you crazy, boo, take all my freedoms away. Everything I get back, every freedom and trust I get back is really nice. I love that. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. So, like, yeah, okay, so yeah, but they were so evil that it's actually merciful to kill them and end their suffering. Well, I mean, are you sure that all the people in a population is evil? Because, like, what are the chances of that? That usually is not the case, right? I mean, there is never the case that every individual in any population is evil. That's not how humans are. Like, it simply isn't, because we are different. Like, we vary. Some of us are good, some of us are bad, some of us are very, very good, and some of us are very bad, and some of us are somewhere in between. That's how we are. And is it like, if all of them were evil, why did he create them? He knew that was going to happen, and he still created that people, and then had them murdered, genocided even. Like that. Did I close the door? The cough just sounded very clear, as if the door was open. Anyway, I mean, that just doesn't make any sense, right? That's like if they were too evil for them to exist, and they needed to be killed, then wouldn't it be even more merciful not to have them exist in the first place? Because they were, I mean, the claim is that they were suffering as a result of existing, and because they were evil, right? And they were doing evil to each other constantly, presumably. Which is absurd in the first place. Like, what kind of humans are we talking about? That probably was not the case. I gotta believe, like, that they've got to be really evil, You know, like, oh, like whipping each other and just constantly like, I'm gonna smack you. Well, I'm gonna kick you in the balls. Well, I'm gonna murder you. Well, I'm gonna torture you. Well, I'm gonna rape you. Well, I'm gonna. It just sounds so funny just saying it, right? All right. Okay. So, and then there's the flood, right? And apparently, when the flood was enacted or put in motion, the only good people were apparently Noah and just accidentally all of his family. Just randomly all of his family as well. They were all good. None of the people in his family were evil. Absolutely not. So it just so happened that there was one good person on earth, Noah, and just randomly his family as well, and all of his family. Yeah, that seems suspicious to me. It's like, yeah, I think there is some bias in here. Anyway, okay, so fine. Um, let's say he was the only good person on earth, etc., etc. So that means there's got to be a lot of bad people on earth at that time. Okay, well, that means that God created mostly bad people, doesn't it? Because at one point there was only Noah that was good and his family. I mean, okay, so like everyone else was bad. That's a lot of people. Like everyone else. 99.9999997% maybe of all people were bad. Wow. Like, what was the starting point? God started and created people completely good, but because of free will, they were good but turned evil, even though they didn't want to and wouldn't want to if they were good. Because I gotta believe that He created people to be good, you know? And if He did create people to be good, then they would want to do good things, naturally. Oh yeah, about free will. If all of us only did good things, then we would be robots. No, but I don't do good things because I'm a robot. I do good things because I want to. And when I have done bad things, I did bad things because I wanted to, right? And that bad that was in me was not because I was good, right? Apparently there is some evil in me, right? But now the good in me has won over the bad in me, right? But that means there is bad in the first place. And so that means that if God created me, He created me with the good and the bad. That's not on me, that's His responsibility. Okay, so some Christians respond to this by saying, well, I mean, when parents have a child and the child turns out to be bad, does bad things, etc., is it the parents' responsibility then? Well, when human parents have a child, they don't control the genetics or how the child is gonna be, or every environmental effect that will be um, significant for how they turn out. They don't control that, right? Because their power is extremely limited, right? They have no control over the genetic makeup. But God does, right? He has 100% control of that, right? He is almighty, remember, right? All powerful. He can do absolutely everything and He knows everything, right? So if He created you bad, you got to believe that He wanted to. And not only that, He knew you were going to turn out bad because He knows the future as well. I mean, He wouldn't be almighty if He didn't. And so, He created all evil people, full knowing they were going to turn out evil. Because, you know, let's talk about responsibility. I believe that we have responsibility to the degree that we have power. The more power we have, the more responsible we are. The less power we have, the less responsible we are. And power includes, what you are physically able to do, strength, um, you know, like hypothetically, magical powers, you know, lifting things with your mind, or changing things or creating things, whatever it might be. All those things that God can do, right? If He's Almighty. Um, and then there is knowledge, which is also a part of power. If you know how to do, how to get a certain result, or what happens when you do this, or what something means or entails, that gives you more power, because that means you can, control it better, because you know what it is, right? If I didn't know what this phone was, then I could not, use it properly. That means less power to me, right? So there is like the physical ability to change things, and there's also the knowledge aspect of power, right? Um, and uh, yeah. So yeah, and so humans have very limited power. Like there's a lot we don't know, there's a lot we can't do, right? Like we are not very strong. We can't lift a building, we can't lift a planet, we can't crush a planet, you know. I mean, we can make atom bombs after millions of years of science, and then cooperating and being very diligent and working really hard and just accidentally coming across it, then yeah, we could create that. Um, but when we do, that's yeah, but that's like cooperation and a lot of time to figure that out. It's like one of the things that it's like it's not something that anyone can do just whenever. It's very limited who can send an atom bomb somewhere and blow up the world, which I mean, still can't really do. um, I don't think any atom bomb is really big enough to create a full blown apocalypse of the whole world, you know, yet. Although probably like large parts of it, maybe, like a whole country, maybe if it's like a medium sized one. Anyway, like we're weaker than a horse, we're weaker than an ox, we're stronger than a fox. Like we're like, but we can't lift a lot. The strongest humans can lift hundreds of kilos, but that's it, right? We can't. None of us can lift. Maybe some of us can lift a ton, uh, but definitely not more than that, right? Never 2 tons. That's not possible for a human. It just isn't. Um, okay, so how many tons of material are there in the universe? I mean, it's a vast amount, right? A ton in the whole universe, that's smaller than a grain of sand on a very large beach full of grains of sand, right? The stars of the universe, they are so huge. We can do nothing. We can't even reach the stars. We would die before we got there, because it takes so long to travel there, right? We cannot control other people's minds. We cannot, um, you know, we cannot, like, a lot of us struggle just convincing other people. A lot of us struggle with social skills. A lot of us struggle with this. A lot of us struggle with ourselves. Bad feelings within ourselves, etc. Our power is so freaking limited. But God is almighty, right? He can do everything. That means, you know, simply that he is 100% responsible for everything because he's able to do everything and he knows everything. So, yeah, he's 100% responsible. Everything that happens is 100% on him. You know, free will? Yeah, sure. But he created our free will and he created everything around us that we are able to interact with and get influenced by. He created the devil, he created, this room, he created the people that put me in here, he created me, he created my mind with my free will in it. Absolutely everything is what he created. I have no control over, all of this. I have no control over who I am deep inside. That is just, I have control over just how aware I am, right? Well, a little bit. I just happen to be smart enough to become aware of a lot of things, but that's I didn't design my mental abilities so that I would be smart enough to become aware of all the things I'm aware of, or that I would be able to argue this well. It's just chance, right? I don't deserve having this very rational ability. It just happened, right? I just happened to be born to my parents with the specific set of cognitive skills that I have, right? Just random. Like my consciousness just happened to be in this body, in this mind. I didn't choose that. I didn't design that. I didn't create anything of that, any part of that. So yeah, like free will? No, there's no such thing. And also going back to the genocide thing. Okay, so like you can claim that all the people uh, in a population were actually bad. The thing is, apparently, it wasn't just one population. There are several examples of genocide in the Bible. And then there is also the flood, which, kills all of the people except for just one family. uh, and it just seems so barbaric to me that that's how he needed it done, right? Oh yeah, you need to actually kill it. I need to actually drown the people. He could have just made him vanish, you know. But I completely understand that that wasn't something that people who lived thousands of years ago thought about. They just thought about mundane things. How do people die? Well, they get killed, sometimes brutally, like drowning, for example, or by the sword, or similar things. That's the normal ways to die. And so, like, just imagining that someone who has that power could actually just make someone disappear, completely painlessly. That's probably a little advanced, abstract thinking. Yeah, I completely expect people from thousands of years ago to not think of such things. Oh yeah, that's right. You could just make them disappear. It's a little sophisticated to think of that, right? And today, it's easier for us to think of that because our society has evolved so much that we, have, um, like created a cultural, set of information that we are more easily able to think of such things. Like there's like a vast number of films that show a vast number of scenarios, right? Which enhances our ability to imagine things in general. Our ability to think independent of a specific situation. And because yeah, it's not possible that people just disappear, but we are now able to think independent of that because of because people have been doing that for a lot of years now in society, and we have learned from that, and we are now able to think more theoretically. So yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be and then there would be no need to murder, no need to make good people into murderers, because he could just make them disappear. He could make him disappear immediately before they even started suffering, or at least before they had suffered for a long time, you know but he didn't do that. And yeah, and it's like a large tsunami that encompasses the whole world. That's pretty brutal. I mean, you gotta be really scared when this, huge. Well, I don't know if there were waves. The flood came in waves. I don't know. But if it did, that's gonna be really scary. And then you're like, oh, scrambling to stay alive and stuff. And then, you're like, holy shit, I gotta, you know, it's the water is coming. I'm gonna drown. I'm gonna drown. I'm gonna drown. That's gotta be really scary and terrifying. He could have just make him disappear immediately, like, boom, disappeared. Now you don't exist anymore. And that was apparently the purpose. And so, that could have been so easy to just make happen. But he didn't do that. And it makes sense that he didn't do that, because the people that wrote that mythology also wasn't able to think of that, right? They weren't able to think of that. They thought of it differently, right? They were people that lived in a much more primitive society.